Well, good morning, everybody. If you would take your Bibles and turn to Exodus 32. Exodus 32, and that will be where we start this morning. It's good to see all of you here. Some of you probably had a late night if you went to the Vestavia singing last night. I told somebody this morning that's not just a singing, that's a reunion for a lot of you. But I appreciate you being here today, and this is going to be pretty well lecture style. And I've got a lot crammed into these 4 lessons, and so it's going to be pretty rapid fire. And as I mentioned last night, if you want the outlines or if you want the PowerPoints, just give me a note with your email address on it, and I'll be glad to send it to you. You probably won't be able to take notes as well today because of it being so rapid. I mean, there may be a few things that you would like to jot down. But don't worry about it. I'll be glad to get every bit of it to you, and you can take it and use it as you'd like. We're talking about against the gods, identifying the God that has won your heart. And I hope these lessons will serve to be helpful to you. Some years ago, when Michael Jordan was pretty well the face of Nike, he went to the home of an NBA team owner. He was with him. They were personal friends. And it was a pretty cold day, and as Michael entered the house, he said, "Hey man, it's kind of cold outside today." He said, "Have you got a coat that I could borrow?" And he said, "Sure." He said, "The closet is down the way." He told him where the closet was. And Michael disappeared as he went to get a coat out of the closet. When he came back, he had a huge pile of clothes, jackets, and other things such as that. And he threw them down on the floor. He went back to the closet. He came back and he even had a bigger pile, and he threw them down on the floor. Then he disappeared into the kitchen. And when he came out of the kitchen, he had a butcher knife. He took the butcher knife, he went to the clothes, and he began to rip and to shred every single one of the pieces of clothes that he had pulled out of the closet. You see, what he had pulled out was all clothing that was made by Puma. Ralph Sampson, who was also a personal friend of the NBA owner, had given him those. But also in the closet were a number of Nike jackets, Nike apparel. But Michael cut up all of the Puma stuff, and he said, "Don't let me ever see you with this stuff again." He said, "You cannot ride the fence." And he then told him, he said, here's a number to my agent. You call him, and he'll supply you with all the Nike material that you want. Here was a man who was the face of Nike, and what he was basically saying is that you cannot be neutral. And what he does on that occasion is he rips everything else to shreds so that Nike could be number one. And what I'm wanting to stress to you about that is that is exactly how God feels about that thing as well. God does not want just a part of your closet. He wants to be the entire closet. And we see that in a number of places. Look in Exodus chapter 32, and I want you to look beginning in verse 8. Exodus chapter 32, beginning in verse 8. You remember that God had come down on this mountain, and he's giving Moses the 10 Commandments. And as we read last night in Exodus 32 and verse 8, God tells him to get down. He says in verse 8, "They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made themselves a molded calf and worshipped it and sacrificed to it. And they said, 'This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt.' And the Lord said to Moses, 'I have seen this people. Indeed, it's a stiff-necked people. Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and that I may consume them, and I will make of you a great nation.'" Do you hear what God is saying when he sees that idol, when he sees that calf? He let me alone that I may consume them. And he no longer owns them as his people. He said, your people that you brought out of the land of Egypt. You may know the rest of the story. Moses went down, he broke the 10 Commandments in their sight. He took that gold calf, he ground it to powder, he poured it into the water, and he made them drink it. Basically, the message in that is, you drink your calf. I'm saying that in a strong way because that's exactly how God feels about it when we have other gods competing for him. When we have other gods in our life. And so you see that. Turn to Mark the 11th chapter. And I want you to see that Jesus did the same thing. We talked last night about some things that made Jesus very angry. We have 2 occasions when he does something like this. You may remember in John chapter 2, Jesus goes into the temple. Or we're going to Mark 11, but I'm speaking of John 2. In John chapter 2, he goes in the temple and he finds them in there selling oxen and sheep and doves. And he goes in there and he takes some cords and he makes a whip and he begins popping that whip at people. He's driving everything out of the temple, and then picture a Jesus who grabs the tables and just slings them across the room and says, "Take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of merchandise." That's not a Jesus that we are customary to think about. It's not the Jesus that people in the world preach very much. But Jesus hated what they were doing to God's worship place. And here in Mark chapter 11, look at what it says in verse 15. They came to Jerusalem, and Jesus went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he would not allow anyone to carry wares through the temple. Now verse 17. He said, "Is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of thieves." He didn't say that in John 2. These are two different instances. But the idea was they were probably charging people high prices. They might have had unjust balances as they weighed out things to people. Somehow they took all that buying and selling as a way to rob people. Covetousness had become their God, even in the house of God. And Jesus says, "You take these things away." And so in the Old Testament and the New Testament, we're seeing that both God the Father and Jesus are both extremely jealous for us. Now, to understand that, it's important for you to understand that the reason God is like this is because the relationship that you have with God is a marriage. Do you think of it that way? You're married to God. You're married to Jesus if you are a Christian. And it is not an open marriage. It's not the kind of thing where you can just bring whatever you want to in it. It is not open. He will not share you with the gods. And that's what we're going to be stressing throughout the day. He is a jealous God, and so is Jesus. Turn to Exodus 34:14. We won't read all of these. They all basically say the same thing, except I like Exodus 34:14 because of the way it puts it. He had said it in the Ten Commandments. He will say it later. But look at Exodus 34 and verse 14. We'll back it up to 13. He says, "You shall destroy their altars. You shall break down their sacred pillars. You shall cut down the wooden images. For you shall worship no other God. For the Lord," listen to this, "the Lord whose name is jealous." That didn't just say God is jealous. That verse says God's name is jealous. If anybody ever asked you, "Hey, what's the name of your God?" How many of you would have said, "Oh, my God's name is jealous"? When the Bible talks about the name of God, it's talking about everything that He is. And so what we're learning here is that at the core, our God is a jealous God. Now, let me ask you, what does that demand from you? Since God wants all of you, 100% you, because He loves you and adores you, what does that demand from you? You know, we sometimes sing the song that has these words, "Were the whole realm of nature mine." In other words, if you had the world and everything in it and all of it belonged to you, that would be a present far too small. In other words, if you gave all the universe to God, it's too small of a present. Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all. And that's what God is calling for. Quickly, I've got to give you these points. I wish I could spend more time with them, but I think that you will understand them all. Some very interesting parallels from the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, God found His bride as a baby and He cleaned her up. If we were to go to Ezekiel chapter 16, I encourage you to read that sometime. He describes Israel like a baby, that somebody had this baby and just ripped the cord, had ripped the umbilical cord and just leaves the baby there wallowing in its blood. God comes along, sees the baby wallowing in its blood, picks it up, cleans it up, and says, "Live." He goes on to describe how that she grew up and she became beautiful. He even uses very graphic terms about how beautiful she was. And I'll just go ahead and say this. When God talks about His relationship with Israel, He uses it in marriage terms. He even talks about sexual things in His relationship with them. But He says that you grew up and you were beautiful. And I would like for you to look at verse 8. Ezekiel 16 and verse 8. Ezekiel 16 and verse 8. Can we go ahead and read verse 7 to show you how graphic he can be at some time? I'm not trying to embarrass you. Verse 7, he says, I made you thrive like a plant in the field, and you grew, you matured, you became very beautiful. Your breasts were formed, your hair grew, but you were naked and bare. When I passed by you again and looked upon you, indeed your time was the time of love, and I spread my wing over you, and I covered your nakedness. Yes, I swore an oath to you, and I entered into a covenant with you, and you became mine. Do you see it? I saw you, I loved you, I married you. I entered into a marriage covenant with you, and you became mine. That's what God wants. God wants you. I want you to really get that and take that home. God wants you. And if you can learn to get one-on-one with God like that, and it's not just a church thing where it's kind of like just all these people, if you can ever just get one-on-one with you and God, it's going to make such a great difference. God found His bride as a baby. He cleaned her up, and He's done the same thing with all of us. He married Israel, and you're married to Him too. Romans 7 talks about that you're free to leave the law of Moses and be married to another. So when you obeyed the gospel, you married Jesus. Revelation 19 and also Revelation 21 talks about a great marriage feast that we're going to get to go to one day and be a part of. A great marriage feast is coming when we finally see our bridegroom and we're joined to Him forever. Do you see these parallels, all this marriage stuff? Then this, Israel committed adultery against God, and we can too. I'm not going to turn there also, but I will just say in graphic terms, God says it worse than I'm going to say it. But basically God says to Israel, you offered yourself to anybody who passed by. You were just prostitutes. You offered yourself to anybody and everybody that passed by. So He's describing it in marriage terms. You cheated on me. And again, He gets very, very strong as He does that. Turn to Jeremiah 3 and verse 9. Jeremiah 3 and verse 9. Jeremiah chapter 3 and verse 9. I think this verse says it as well as any of them on the screen. So He says to Israel, He says, it came to pass through her casual harlotry. In other words, she didn't care. She didn't care who she slept with. And He's talking about your covenants with other nations and you counting on other nations and your gods. Your casual harlotry. And she defiled the land and she committed adultery. Look, she committed adultery with stones and trees. Now here's my question. How can you commit adultery with a stone? How can you commit adultery with a tree? And yet God says you committed adultery with stones and trees. Here's how you do it. When you set that idol up and you love that idol more than God, God views it as spiritual adultery against Him. The screen we had up earlier showed some of these things. Listen to me. You can cheat on God with alcohol, with drugs, with Hollywood, with entertainment, with recreation, with fleshly fornication, with fleshly idolatry. You can cheat on God with pornography. You can cheat on God by sexting. You can let your material things be another god. With your success and fame, all of these things are ways to cheat on God. And you may be saying to yourself, well, hold on a minute, Jeff. Some of those things that you just mentioned, they're not wrong in and of themselves. What's wrong with entertainment? What's wrong with recreation? What's wrong with having some material things? And as we said last night, the answer to that is there's nothing wrong with those things. But we also said this, it's not wrong until it's wrong. If you don't take any one-liner with you besides that one, make sure you get that one. They're not wrong until they're wrong. And what that means is there comes a point in your life when you can let any of those things grow way too large in your life to the point that they are consuming you, they're all you think about, and they have truly become your God. Material things, recreation, entertainment, all those things can become your God. And then this one-liner, they are not wrong until the gifts take you away from the giver. When the gifts, sex is a gift, recreation is a gift, entertainment's a gift, All those things are gifts. But when you elevate the gift above the giver, then God becomes quite angry. Let me ask you quickly, can you relate to God's feelings on this? I know you're not married yet, but just suppose that Darren and Nancy are in some city a couple of ways away here, and they walk in, and I'm sitting in the restaurant, and I'm eating with another woman. And if I think I know Darren very well, it's a candlelit dinner. It looks quite romantic. If I know Darren like I think I know Darren, he's probably going to walk over and say, "Hey, Jeff, would you like to introduce me to who this lady is? And what's going on here?" I doubt very seriously that Darren would have any problems doing that. In fact, he's been given permission to do that. I've told the guys here at Gardendale, if you ever catch me doing anything like that, I give you personal permission to take me out in the woodshed and beat the tar out of me. So I don't doubt that they would do this. But suppose I answer him and say, "Oh, Darren, I'm on a date, man." He says, "Well, what about your wife?" "What about her?" "Oh, I love her too. I've taken her out several times." Would he be angry and disgusted? Should he be angry and disgusted? Can you imagine me afterward meeting my wife at the door, and she knows all about that, and she says, "Hey, honey, did you have a good time on your date?" Newsflash. That's not going to happen. Several years ago, there was a news story about a lady whose husband cheated, and she took that matter in her own hands. Her last name kind of fits what she did, but anyway, I won't get into all that. I'm married to one of those kinds. I'm afraid of that woman. I'm afraid of what she would do if I was ever guilty of this kind of thing. Can you relate to that jealousy? Can you relate to that feeling? I have known of people who had dreams. It was just a dream, but they dreamed that their spouse was unfaithful to them. Any of you guys that are married ever had a dream like that? And some have testified that they wake up sick. They wake up literally sick to their stomach. And then when they realize it was just a dream, they thank the God of heaven. Pray right there in bed. "God, thank you that was just a dream." The most horrifying, sickening feeling you can ever have. My wife has cheated on me. My husband has cheated on me, whichever the case may be. Any of y'all know Garth Brooks? One of the greatest entertainers of all time, wrote a song called "The Thunder Rolls." I won't read all the lyrics, but here's a few. 3:30 in the morning, not a soul in sight. The city's looking like a ghost town on a moonless summer night. Raindrops on the windshield, there's a storm moving in. He's heading back from somewhere that he never should have been. And the thunder rolls. And the thunder rolls. She's waiting by the window when he pulls into the drive. She rushes out to hold him, thankful he's alive. But on the wind and the rain, a strange new perfume blows. And the lightning flashes in her eyes, and he knows that she knows. And the thunder rolls, and the thunder rolls. The thunder rolls and the lightning strikes. Another love grows cold on a sleepless night as the storm blows on out of control deep in her heart. The thunder rolls. That's the song that was made popular. It has another line that he only sings in concerts. She runs back down the hallway to the bedroom door. She reaches for the pistol kept in the dresser drawer. She tells the lady in the mirror he won't do this again, because tonight will be the last time she'll wonder where he's been. And you hear those words and you say, "Woo." When you think about God, do you think about your God as a jealous God? You ever heard of heat of passion crimes? Do you know if a husband does shoot and kill his wife while she's having relations with another man, they'll go a little lesser on him? It's called a heat of passion crime. It's understood to some degree. Not justified, but understood. Listen to Proverbs 6. Turn to Proverbs 6. Proverbs chapter 6, beginning in verse 34. Proverbs 6 and verse 34. Isn't this what God is saying? It says in Proverbs 6 and verse 34, underline it, highlight it, memorize it. For jealousy is a husband's fury. Jealousy is a husband's fury, therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance. He will accept no recompense, nor will he be appeased, though you may give him many gifts. Now what God is saying is it doesn't justify it, but God says don't be surprised if when you mess with another man's wife that he is so jealous he will not spare. And you can't give him enough gifts to cool him down. Again, he's not saying go do it. He's just saying that's the way it is. God understands jealousy in a marriage relationship. So if you can understand how you would feel if you were cheated on, then all you got to do is take that feeling and say to yourself, that's exactly how God feels when I have something competing for Him in His place. That's all you got to do. And you got the whole thing figured out. Quickly, God pursued Israel with great intensity, and He will pursue us. When David committed adultery with Bathsheba and had her as his God, he says that the hand of God pressed upon him. In other words, God will come after you. In the story of the prodigal son in Luke chapter 15, did you see how the father so much wanted that son back? Somebody once referred to God as the hound of heaven. He'll come after you. He'll come after you. Because that's how much He loves you. So even after Israel had cheated on Him, He still pursued her with a great intensity, and He will pursue you as well. And then this last point, ultimately because she never turned back to Him, God divorced her. But even though He divorced her, He still wanted her back. Look at Jeremiah 3 and verse 8. Jeremiah chapter 3 and verse 8. Jeremiah 3 and verse 8. Then I saw that for all the causes for which backsliding Israel had committed adultery. Verse 8 says, I had put her away, and I gave her a certificate of divorce, yet her treacherous sister Judah did not fear, but she went and played the harlot also. I divorced Israel, thought Judah might learn a lesson from it, but she went and played the whore too, against me. And so that's what God did. And you know Matthew 7:23. If we start following other gods and we die that way, Jesus is very simply going to say, depart from me. I never knew you. And so this is serious business, isn't it? Quite serious business. Now I want to go to the rest of the lesson here. In Joshua chapter 24, turn there, Joshua chapter 24. Joshua stands before the children of Israel as they had been led by him into the land of Canaan. This is a new generation. And listen to his preaching in Joshua 24, verse 15 and 16. Well, actually 14 and 15. In verse 14, Joshua 24, here's what Joshua says. Now therefore fear the Lord, serve Him in sincerity and truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the river. That's one. And put away the gods that were in Egypt. That's two. And he says, serve the Lord. If it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods that were on the other side of the river, that's three, or the gods and the Amorites in whose land you dwell, that's four. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. How many of you preachers, when you offer an invitation to people, you give them a multiple choice? You give them four choices that they can choose from. And that's what Joshua says. He said, choose you this day whom you are going to serve. And he gives four choices. The gods of your father and mother, which your fathers served on the other side of the river, on the other side of the Euphrates. Abraham's family were idolaters. You going to serve those gods? Then he talks about the gods of your past, the gods of your ancestors that were in Egypt. Are you going to serve the gods that were in Egypt? Somebody once said that it was easier for God to get Israel out of Egypt than it was for him to get Egypt out of Israel. They never got Egypt out of their bloodstream. The gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. And now he's talking about the gods that are right there. These are the newcomers on the scene. These are the new gods that you are now learning about in the land that you have come. Are you going to serve the gods of your present culture? He says, I don't know what you're going to do, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And so he says, we're going to serve the true God. What choice did he not give them? Anybody realizing the choice he didn't give them? There was one choice he did not give them, and that was no choice at all. And I want to leave you with this point. Sometimes people think, well, if I don't make any choice, I haven't made any choice. No, that's not true. If you don't choose, you chose. If you don't choose, you chose. You have no choice but to choose. Everybody, listen to me, everybody is created to worship. Everybody is going to worship something. And I don't care who that is. I don't care whether he's ever darkened a church building. Everybody is going to worship something. And to not choose a God is to choose a God. Basically, that God in that case may have been yourself. There was no box that he gave them for none of the above. There was no E. There's no none of the above. His point in that is that you are going to serve something. Every day in our world we are choosing our gods and we are bringing our offerings, and oftentimes the offering that we offer is ourselves. I'll give myself to this. I'll give myself to you. One philosopher said the opposite of theism is not atheism. In other words, it's not like I'm either a theist or an atheist. He says that's not the choices. He said the opposite of theism is idolatry. You either worship the true God or you worship an idol. It's as simple as that. It cuts down just that clean. And by the way, when a preacher preaches, guess what he does? He is offering salvation to you. He's offering something that's going to make things better for you. He's offering you a way to be saved. He's trying to make things better for you. He offers you salvation and he extends an invitation. And by the way, do you realize TV does the same thing? Listen to me. If you are unhappy, bored, or depressed, then buy this. You'll be saved from your unhappiness, your boredom, and your depression. Talk to your doctor about this medication. And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with some medication, but this is going to make everything so much better. See, talk to your doctor about this medication. Eat at this restaurant. Drive this car. Take this vacation. Is that not what TV is doing? This is going to save you from the way you feel. It's going to make everything better for you. And so they offer that salvation, and then they offer the invitation. Dial this number right now, 1-800-da-da-da. Visit this dealer. Order online today. Don't wait, call now. Right? Folks, the gods are calling. And they can be pumped into your home every day. You see, people think if they don't go to church, then they have chosen not to worship. That's not so. I'm not talking about Sunday. I'm talking about what you are Sunday through Saturday. And everybody is worshiping something Sunday through Saturday. Okay, here we go. This is where Jeff has had to do some major soul searching. Because this man actually referred to that right there as antler worship. I didn't choose that term. He used that term. Worship is when you hope in something or someone, and then you chase after it and you give your life to it. Maybe it's not deer hunting for you. Put whatever you want to in the blank. It's when you hope in something or you hope in someone, and then you chase after it and you give your whole life to it. It's when you identify your love and you make sacrifices for it. Listen to what this man said. This is David Blanton, by the way. He's a celebrity with Realtree. They film him all the time taking monster bugs. But here's what he says about his own personal life in Realtree. Here's what he says. My life has certainly at times reflected my priorities as being out of order. Hunting became too important to me. Realtree became the Lord of my life. Do you hear his words? He's saying that. He's already said too important. He says it was my Lord. I had blinders on, and all I could think about was taking more deer in front of a camera and becoming a hunting celebrity. Now he's wanting fame, and you see his gods? And then he says, God dealt with me in a pretty direct way. Now, my emphasis, when I look at deer hanging on the wall of my house, I'm proud of them. I think of the memories that I had, but I don't worship them like I used to. They don't define my identity. Now, here's what I wanted to say. He didn't have to quit his job. He hasn't quit his job. God didn't make him quit. He didn't quit hunting. He still hunts. But he did have to choose what his God was going to be. Do you see? It's okay if you don't let the gift become more important than the giver. Oh, I love my next point. The interesting thing is that you will begin to look like what you worship. That's scary. You will begin to look like what you worship. Let me give you one or two passages. Look at Psalm 115, verses 1 through 8. Psalm 115, verses 1 through 8. Psalm 115, verses 1 through 8. Listen carefully. Make sure you hear this with me. Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but to your name give glory because of your mercy and because of your truth. Why should the Gentiles say, where now is their God? Verse 3. 115, verse 3. Our God is in heaven. He does whatever He pleases. But their idols are silver and gold, the works of men's hands. They have mouths, but they do not speak. They have ears, but they don't hear. They have eyes, but they don't see. They have noses, but they do not smell. They have hands, but they do not handle. They have feet, but they do not walk. They do not mutter through their throat. Hear what he's saying? It's just a piece of wood. It's just a rock. They're not alive. They can't do anything for you. But now notice verse 8. Those who make them are like them, and so is everyone who trusts in them. Listen, you might say of their idols, well, if something can't hear, speak, smell, then it's dumb. It's dumb. Take this one-liner home. When you set up an idol in your life and you worship it, you become just as dumb as it is. I love Isaiah 44. Because in Isaiah 44, you know what he describes there? Here's a man who says, I'm going to make me a god. And he goes out to the woods. You listening? He goes out to the woods and he cuts him a tree down. And he realizes, I'm only going to make my God about 6 feet tall, but I've got 12 feet of tree here. So I'll just cut this in half. He cuts it in half. He takes one half of it and he makes him a god. It's getting kind of cold, so he takes the other half, chops it into firewood, and builds him a fire and sits by the fire, and he says, oh, I feel so good. This is so warm. And God says he's so stupid. He's so stupid that he doesn't even take time to think, if I could burn this half in the fire, I could burn that half in the fire. If I can burn this in the fire, I could burn my God in the fire. He'd be gone just like that. That's how powerful he is. God basically says we lose our minds. We lose our senses. We become like what we worship. We begin to resemble the thing that we love so much. Here's a good point. So what if you worship Jesus? What do you think you're going to become like if you worship Jesus? You're going to become like what you worship. What are you going to become like if Jesus is everything to you and you study Him and learn Him and devour Him and eat Him and live Him? Guess what's going to happen? You're going to become just like Him. Everyone, Luke 6 and verse... Oh, where did it go? Everyone in Luke 6 and verse 46 says that everyone who is perfectly trained will be like his teacher. Do I need to reset it up here? I'm just going to hit slideshow and go from the beginning. See what I know from the current slide and see if it pops back up. All right, anyway, we're going to keep going. Luke 6 and verse 46. Everyone who is perfectly trained will be like his teacher. 2 Corinthians 3 and verse 18 talks about that as we study the Word of God, we are gradually being transformed from glory to glory, which means every little bit that you study Jesus, you are becoming more and more and more and more and more like Him. So my point is really simple, and that is that you're going to become like what you worship. All right, about 10 minutes left. Let's zoom here through the rest of it. Here's your choices. Are you going to worship the gods of your fathers and your mothers? It's really interesting how much children become like their parents. It's really interesting how we have a tendency to do a lot of things the way our parents did them. Turn to 2 Kings 21. In 2 Kings 21, we have Ammon and Manasseh, father and son. 2 Kings chapter 21. Second Kings 21, verses 19 through 21. It says, Ammon was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Meshullemeth, the daughter of Habraz of Jothbah. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord, as his father Manasseh had done. So let me ask you quickly, what was most important to your dad when you were growing up? Did his life evolve around his job? Instead of spending time with the family and going on family vacations and taking some days off with the family, did he always just stay at the office to move up the ladder? Was his mood determined by what kind of day he had at work? Was his temple his office, and did he worship there a good 60 hours a week? Was his identity in his job and his career and instead of his relationship with Christ? And do you see those same things in yourself? What about your mother? Was she obsessed with appearances? Did she have to be in the perfect house? Did she have to have a perfect house before company could come over? Was she always updating the house? If her neighbor got a new SUV, did she have to have one too? Did you have to wear the right clothes from the right store? Always with your mother? It's got to be the right clothes, right store. Do you find yourself doing the same? Is your identity in your appearance? The clothes you wear, what you drive, the house you live in, what other people think about you? Did your dad worship sports and hunting and fishing and sex and money and status or beer? Did your mom worship her career, shopping, entertainment? What was lifted up in the house that you grew up in? What was number one in the house that you grew up in? Clearly the number one thing. Do you see any of your decisions being made the same way? Do you sacrifice for the same things? Are you following the gods of your fathers and your mothers? What about the gods of your past? Again, don't have time to read them all, but basically what these verses say right here, God is still talking to them about the gods of Egypt in Ezekiel 20. Those should have been gone a long time ago. And in Amos chapter 5, he basically says that even when you were leaving Egypt and went out into the wilderness and were traveling, you were secretly still worshiping the gods of Egypt. You never let them go. Let me ask you this question. Many of you have already become Christians. You made a decision that you were going to become a new person and put away the sins of your past. Here's my question. Do you find yourself still struggling with the things that you were supposed to have left behind a long time ago? Are you still worshiping the gods of your past? The problem is oftentimes we try to follow Christ without decisively leaving the old gods behind. Go to Colossians 3. In Colossians 3, beginning in verse 1. Colossians 3, beginning in verse 1. If you then were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ is sitting at the right hand of God. Verse 2 of Colossians 3. Set your mind on things above, and not things on the earth, for you died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, appears, you also will appear with him in glory. Therefore put to death your members that are on the earth: fornication, uncleanness, passion, evil desire, covetousness, which is idolatry. Because of these things the wrath of God is coming upon the sons of disobedience, in which you also once walked when you lived in them. But now you must put off all of these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy language out of your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds, and you have put on the new man, who is renewed in knowledge according to the image of him who created him. The point is simple. Are you still serving the gods of your past? Never really let them go. Maybe baptized because Johnny did it, and then I did it the next week, and whatever. Are you still serving the gods of your past? A third choice that Joshua set before him is the gods in whose land you are living. Okay, so now here's where we get to talk about the gods around us. What would you say they are? If somebody asked you to name the gods of America, what would you say they are? We're going to talk about them. Sex. There's no question people are worshiping that. Sports. I'm going to make you extremely uncomfortable with that one later. Recreation. Entertainment. Handheld devices, video games, food, houses, cars, furnishings. The gods of America, in whose land you dwell. Some of these things start off pretty innocent, but they graduate. This was not innocent, but Baal, by the way, Baal started off as just a god of weather. But then their thoughts was, well, if he's a god of weather, then if he makes the grass green and fertile, then that means he's a god of fertility. And if he's a god of fertility, then maybe that applies to human relations as well. So maybe this god of fertility can be worshipped by us committing fornication with temple prostitutes. And after a while, it just seemed like it was harmless and innocent. It's just what you do to worship Baal. Same thing happens in our culture. You know why churches do the things that they do? You know why many churches offer all kinds of carnal appeals? It's because they want to. It's what they want to do. So they gradually change their worship, or they change everything the church is about to feed me and all my flesh. It's not about feeding the soul. It's about feeding the carnal appetite of men. Go to Romans 12. This is what we got to do. Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12, verse 1. I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. Did you notice that? Present your bodies as a living sacrifice. You offer yourself to God, and you don't ever crawl off the altar. Somebody once said the problem with living sacrifices is that they keep crawling off the altar. Sometimes we crawl off. Verse 2 says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. One of my favorite preachers of all time was David Hartzell. David one time talked about a Play-Doh factory. Any of you have a Play-Doh factory when you were little? I had one. You could stick the Play-Doh in the factory and you could turn the crank and it would go through the mold, and what was spit out on the other side looked just like the mold. What this looked like this. And what David said was, don't let the world push you into its mold, turn the crank, spit you out, and when it does, you look like everybody else. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed. Present yourself holy and acceptable to God, and a living sacrifice unto God. And then the last one, God Himself. Joshua said, as for me and my house, As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Deep down, don't you know that that's the only one that satisfies? That's the only one that satisfies. What has all this stuff really brought us? Really, what has it brought us? Has it really brought us true, deep down happiness? The Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 6 and verse 21. Romans chapter 6 and verse 21. The lesson is soon yours. He talks about how they formerly lived for the flesh, and he says, what fruit did you have in the things of which you are now ashamed? What did it do for you? The things you're now ashamed of, what did it really do for you? For the end of those things is death. Last night we studied Solomon's response in Ecclesiastes 2. You remember what he said? He said, I had all this stuff and I looked and it was all vanity and like grasping for the wind. You ever tried to grab the wind? It's gone. I describe all this stuff that people live for like we had this when Henderson was little. We had this long wand, had a big long piece of garment on it, and you could stick that wand down in the bucket and get it just really wet with soap, and you could spread the wands out and do like this, and it would make a bubble 8 feet wide. It had rainbows all in the bubble, and you'd go, whew, that's beautiful. Then it would float right in front of your nose and pop. And you got soap all over your face. That's the way this stuff is. It's beautiful for a little while. It pops. And you have nothing. And you're left with soap on your face. And Solomon says in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 17, therefore I hated life, because the work that was done under the sun was grievous for me. For all its vanity and grasping for the wind. He says, I hated life. Tom Brady, I don't know if his mindset has changed or if he's found out. But he's about to play for his umpteenth Super Bowl ring. But some years ago on 60 Minutes, he asked this question to the interviewer. Why do I have 3 Super Bowl rings and still there's something greater out there for me? Some would say, hey man, this is what it's all about. You've reached your goal, your dreams, your life. Me, he said, I think to myself, it's got to be more than this. I mean, this can't be all it's cracked up to be. And the interviewer asked him, well, what's the answer? What he's saying is, I haven't found what scratches the itch. What's the answer? And Brady's answer was, I wish I knew. I wish I knew. Where he is now, I don't know on that. Maybe he's found more of the answer. But he's saying the same thing Solomon said. Solomon ended up saying in Ecclesiastes 12:13, you fear God and keep His commandments. That's the whole of man. That's what it's all about. So Joshua offers the invitation. Who are you going to serve? Choose you this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Interestingly enough, what he told them in the next couple of verses was, you can't do it. You can't serve the Lord because God is a jealous God. You can't do it. What he means by that is, I've seen your track record. I know what your fathers did. And here you are saying you're going to serve the Lord. But I'm not convinced you'll do it. You'll just say it. And the proof won't be in the pudding. And what they end up saying to him is, yes, but we will serve the Lord. We will. And he says, all right. All right. After they said, we'll serve the Lord, he said, the oak trees, the stones, and God serve as a witness. The reason an oak tree is a witness is because it doesn't move, generally. A stone doesn't move. These are permanent witnesses. And the language here is, they just heard what you said. The oak tree, the stone, and God just heard what you said. You said you would serve God. Will you? Will He truly be your God? As I finish this lesson, let me ask you this. Think for a moment about your life and the decisions you're currently making. How do your decisions differ from your parents? How do your decisions differ from what you used to do? How do your decisions differ from the people around you? Do you approach money and possessions differently than other people do? Has your life really changed since you decided to follow Christ? And does 1 Peter 4 apply to you when it says they will think it strange that you do not run with them? Does that verse apply to you? I'm a strange bird. I'm a strange bird. I'm a square peg trying to fit into a round hole world. I just don't fit. I'm a misfit. I'm in the land of misfits. Is that you? It should be if you serve God. Are you radically different from the world? God wants to be your all. That's the challenge for me. I'm preaching this for me. But if you can benefit from it, then great. All right, our time is up. We'll give you a 10-minute break and we'll go again. God bless you.